Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and you have found us at the Mighty Mysteries on a Mighty Blaze. I am your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 13 thrillers, the newest being Her Perfect Life, which just went into a second printing. So thank you all for that. Today, I have the absolute delight and joy and honor of interviewing Anthony Horowitz. If I say he's a New York Times bestselling author, that's true, but it's just not enough. He has written 74 books and put together 14 TV series, and even that is not enough. So stay with us and you will hear all about it. His brand new book, I'm looking for it on my desk right now, is A Line to Kill, which I promise you will love. It is witty, it is hilarious, it is inventive, it is unique. It's a terrific mystery, and I absolutely adore it. We are giving away this very copy of the book, and I'm only letting this go out of my sight because I have my own battered, highly read copy, which I am never letting go. So just leave a question or a comment for Anthony in the chat, and one of the Blazers behind the scenes will pick a lucky winner, a very lucky winner. Anthony, welcome to our show today. I'm in Boston, and you are in London.
I am not actually, Hank. I'm in a funny little place called Orford, which is on the coast of England to the east of London, about 150 kilometers from London, in the county of Suffolk. In my little house, and I've sold my home in London, and right now I'm camping here.
Well, so much for my investigative reporting, I say. So you said it's called Orphan?
Orford, Orford, and it's somewhere nobody really knows about, but actually I've written a lot of my mysteries here. Some of them have been set here. If only I could show you the view from the window. It's night here, so it wouldn't look great, but I'm in front of the river, and this is one of the most remarkable parts of the country in that it's had UFO sightings here. We have our very own monster that lives in the river, the merman of Orford. The USA stealth bomber was tested here. The nuclear bomb in the Second World War was tested right in front of my window here. Radar was invented just down the coast. So if you're a storyteller, this is the place to find stories.
Wow, you have monsters and stealth bombers
and the biggest UFO sighting in sort of European history happened over the forest over behind me here. I've often wanted to write about it. It's a place called Rendlesham Forest, and there is an American air base there that is left over from the Second World War. And about 20 or 30 years ago, there was a UFO supposedly that landed in the woods there, and there have been books written about it and many stories told about it. But as I say, whether you believe in these things or not, monsters and spacemen, all the rest of it, it just feeds the imagination, as incidentally does the wonderful views here, the huge skies. I mean, I love Boston, incidentally. I know that's where you are, and it's a beautiful part of the world. But this is where I feel sort of most at home.
Well, what's not to believe? There's so much that we don't know. And if people say they saw a UFO, then they saw the UFO. So I cannot wait. I
believe. I'm a believer. I want to believe. I want to believe.
I do too. I once ruined a dinner party by I can't believe I'm telling you this. I once ruined a dinner party by in the middle of the party saying, if you could meet someone, a being from another planet, and then talk to them and then know that there was life in other worlds, but then you would have to die, would you do it? And I thought that was so interesting. And everybody went, what?
It's funny, Hank, I'm going to tell you something that I do at dinner parties, and it's this. A UFO lands in the woods when you're driving by, you stop, and a door opens in that spaceship. Do you walk inside?
Sure. Do you?
Yeah, I think I do, but it might close and you might be never seen again. You might end up as like being experimented on. It might take off and they don't understand that you can't breathe in outer space. All sorts of horrible things can happen. So it is like your question as well. Death could be the result, but do you do it? I guess I do. My wife has always said no, she won't. Nor has she said she's particularly sorry if I do it. So that's a bit worrying.
Well, I think what you need to do is and I get you all, if you're all here today listening to this, I promise you we are here to talk about Line to Kill. But now we're talking about dinner parties. I guess what you need to do is you get out your cell phone and you get photos of it and you send it, and then you tell someone the door is opening and I'm getting on. So then it's documented.
That is if you've got your phone with you, which I never have. I leave my cell everywhere. But if I have it, I will do just that.
And with that said, let me give you the formal introduction of Anthony Horowitz, so you know that he and I, who have never actually met in real life, have already started talking about UFOs and aliens and what you would do in theoretical situations, and we completely agree. So let me introduce to you Anthony Horowitz, just a little bit of the formal bio, who's been writing since he was 10, and we will talk about that, of course. And it says he is one of the UK's most successful authors, and his bio says he may have committed more fictional murders than any living author. I guess that's a good thing. I can't list everything that he's done. We will put it in the comments, but you need to know on TV, he created Midsummer Murders and Foyle's War, which I cannot watch without crying because it is so dear. He created Alex Rider. On paper, he's the new Ian Fleming and the new Arthur Conan Doyle. That's big. You've certainly read his Magpie Murders, which is about to be a gorgeous series on Masterpiece Theater, which Anthony has seen. And The Word is Murder, one of the beginning of the Hawthorne and Horowitz novels, which you have certainly read. And it is not on his official biography for some strange reason, but he is one of my favorite authors of all time. Congratulations on this wonderful book and on all the wonderful acclamation for it. How does that, I mean, it's a reporter question, but how does that feel?
Well, I have to say straight away, Hank, if I'd won as many awards as you have, I think I'd probably feel even better about myself. But I have to tell you, I am very, very happy. I mean, the book has had enormous success particularly in America and in Japan, and of course in England too. And one of the things that I love is two things actually. Is first of all being part of this crime fraternity. You know, that all we crime writers are close to each other. We agree, we're friends, we support each other. And your kind words are just evident to that. And I am very grateful to you for them. So thank you very much indeed. But also, you know, what I love is that here we all are, all around the world, different countries. Our books go out into, like yours, into many, many countries, and people all over the world enjoy them. And it just reminds me that when we think about the world as being a world full of people who are in different places and have different ideas and different points of view, books bring us all together, and murder mysteries do in particular. And I love that aspect of them. That is one of the reasons why I get such a kick out of writing these books.
What is it about mysteries, do you think? I know that the readership during the pandemic of mysteries and thrillers and suspense especially has just burgeoned. Why do you think that is?
It is interesting, isn't it? All books spiked in this country by 5% during COVID. And I think it was something like, I forget how many million copies sold per year, but it was enormous. But you're quite right that crime was at number one of it. And I do think about this, and I even ask these questions inside my books, which have a sort of a meta side, not just being murder mysteries, but commenting on them. So these are the sort of questions I deal with. And I guess, I mean, I can give you a few answers. I think, first of all, that in a world in which it is so hard to find the truth, because of 24-hour news, because of fake news, because everything is moving so quickly and there are social media, everybody has a point of view. What is true? It's hard to find, but in a murder mystery, you always finish with the truth. This is the killer. This is how the murder was committed. And with the truth comes a sense of healing. The community in which this murder has taken place has healed. The detective arrives, solves the crime, and leaves again, but leaves everybody happier than they were. So I think that's one of the reasons. It provides absolute truth, but with truth comes comfort. And I think there is no book that is more comforting in a strange way or more absorbing than a murder mystery, when you get hooked on the character of your investigator and the clues are being thrown at you and you think, is it this person, is it that person? It's almost like doing a crossword in a way that you just can, while you're reading it, the world disappears, and COVID and politics and the environment and all the things that worry us every minute of our waking days, it sometimes feels, just go away while you're absorbed in the book. So I think those are some of the reasons why crime fiction in particular has found its place and has been so useful to so many people who have suffered for 2 years with all these problems we've had, that, you know, it is a wonderful get into bed, pull up the covers, enjoy the story.
It's always safe inside a book. You know, you're solving somebody else's problems. You're facing someone else's realities. You can control that. You know, the good guys win and the bad guys get what's coming to them. And in the end, you get some justice. I mean, I love thinking about truth and justice. I know it sounds sort of highfalutin, but as you say, is truth what you hope for? Is truth what you wish for? Is truth what someone tells you over and over and over? If you just say it's true, is it true? And what's justice? There's legal justice and psychological justice and emotional justice and moral justice. All of those things come into play in your books.
I think that is what I'm trying to search for. It's one of the reasons why I love Golden Age detective fiction so much, because it returns me to a world where all the things you're talking about, justice, truth, a sense of completion, honor, are, and friendship, and just a world that you can understand, are so much more available in Golden Age detective fiction. Once things like computers arrive and mobiles and satellites and the pace of modern life, it's so fast. Everything is happening so quickly. And that, again, is another attraction of a murder mystery, which is that it happens much more slowly. You enjoy it because you're searching through it to try and solve it. And at the same time, a detective does take a bit of time to get there, unless in a more modern stories, of course, where in my stories I don't really have forensics. I don't go in for the forensics, the microscope, the microscopes and the chemicals and the blood splatter and all the rest of it, because I'm actually much more interested in that same world of Christie, of Sherlock Holmes, of Dorothy L. Sayers, Ellery Queen, where everything is just happening at a slower pace. Another reason to love these books.
And it also depends on the wit and the care and the intelligence and the determination of the people who are trying to solve the crime. Let's go back to your book. I know this is. Let's talk about your book for a second. I know, wild. A Line to Kill, and there's so many levels of this book to talk about. So let's just first talk about the story, because no matter what other marvelous things are inside these pages, it's a great detective story on the surface, and it takes place in a very special place that I had never heard of before. Talk a little bit about that, where it is and why you chose that.
Well, the book is set in a place called Alderney, which is an island to the south of Great Britain and about 8-9 miles north of France. So it's in the English Channel, and it's one of the Channel Islands. There are I think 4 of them: Sark, Guernsey, Jersey, and Alderney. And I discovered Alderney about 3 years ago, before COVID, when 2 teenage boys wrote me the most wonderful letter inviting me to the Alderney Literary Festival, which in itself sounds crazy because Alderney is only 3 miles long and half a mile wide. It's a tiny place. And these kids wrote a letter. They said, if you come to Alderney, you'll see Roman, blue telephone boxes. In London, of course, we have red telephone boxes, but in Alderney, they're blue. And on Friday, there are no chips. And I thought, how can I resist this invitation? So I went. And this island, Hank, it is the most extraordinary place because although it is tiny, it is jammed with history. It was at the time of Queen Victoria, Britain was scared of being invaded. So they built fortresses all over the island. And everywhere you look, there are these huge Victorian fortresses. Then cut forward to 1940 or 43, I think it was, when a less happy story, the Nazis actually invaded the Channel Islands in the Second World War and landed on Jersey and Sark and in Alderney. The population escaped, but the Nazis then started building more fortresses because they were afraid that the British would try and take back the islands. So as well as the Victorian forts, you've now got these really bizarre Nazi fortresses, some of which are like something out of Star Wars. I described them in the book. Add to which the island is jammed with caves and sort of secret passageways and little coves, and it's just an island that is perfect that cries out to be the setting for a murder mystery. And I'll just add one more thing, that when I went there for this literary festival, I had a wonderful time there. The first thing they said to me when I landed on the island was, do you know there has never been a murder, by which they meant a domestic murder, there has never been a murder on Alderney. And when they said that to me at that exact moment, I said, well, there's going to be one now. And in fact, in A Line to Kill, there are 2. So I've changed the history of Alderney, at least in fictional terms.
There's going to be one now. That's hilarious. And there is a map of Alderney at the beginning of the book, which is that realistic?
It is completely accurate, yes. And I rather like books with maps. I've always, as a child, I liked a book with a map because it allowed me to imagine myself there. So, for example, The Lord of the Rings, a book I read when I was very young, has got the most wonderful map of the Shire and Mordor and the whole world that Tolkien created. And by looking at the map, I could imagine myself in. And you don't need the map. I mean, again, writing a murder mystery book, it's very important to me that everything should be very clear and it should be an easy read. I get very annoyed in a way when I read a book and I have to go back 20 pages. Who is this? Where am I? What's going on? I like the book to be very easy to follow, but a map nonetheless gives it a certain edge. Gives it a sort of a, just as I say, and it adds to the imagination of the writing.
Sure, and I always went back and referred to the map to see how far away something was, or whether Hawthorne could have gotten there in time, or whether someone else could have shown up. But it's interesting because when you have this quirky, interesting, unusual, unique place with a sort of dark history, I noticed that you were just sort of careful about the World War II elements of it.
You're absolutely right, Hank, because, I can say to you now, but the Nazis built labor camps on the island, and many, many hundreds of people. That's why I said there'd be no murders. I meant domestic murders, because of course there were many, many murders in the Second World War, and it's a great tragedy. But my book's entertainments. I mean, we were talking earlier about how we need, at this time in particular, to be able to escape from some of the sort of the unpleasantnesses of modern life. I don't want my readers to have to wallow in that sort of unhappiness. I mention it. It is a big part of the story in a way. It's definitely there. I couldn't ignore it. For that matter, the other part of the story, which involves a power line that is being cut right through the middle of the island, which is dividing the islanders between those who want to have the money that the line will bring and those who worry about the damage to the environment and incidentally to the war graves, which it's going to slice through. That is also real. So when I visit somewhere, one of the first things I do is to try and find out as much about the place as I can and to use what I found out as part of the story. So both the war and this latest argument about the power line are real and exist and are used in the book. But in a way,
it's the title. I mean, that is so amazing.
That is the line. It is. The title to these books. This is the third in a series. It began with the word is murder, the sentence is death, a line to kill. I am unfortunately running out of titles that reflect writing and literacy and words and phrases and stuff.
Well, so I'm sure that somebody in the comments can come up with one. I've been thinking about this myself, I have to say. And the only one, I mean, there's obviously no comma for a reporter. And there's some sort of clause, like dependent clause or some sort of something like that. I'm sure you've thought of that. But my favorite, the one I've come up with it's called the parentheticals. So it's sort of people that are kind of like parents, but by the way, are also something else. So feel free to.
I do like that. I'll tell you the one I have in the back of my head. I wanted to do one which has full stop in it because I thought, life comes to a full stop. But that doesn't work in America because you don't have full stops, you have periods. So that doesn't work for that. But then I thought out one that might be set or start off in an autopsy where a body has been, examined and is lying inside its, in its chilled cabinet, and a body part is stolen. And that's the beginning of the story. And the title would then be The Colon is Missing.
You heard it here first, ladies. I thought you were going to say.
I don't think I'm going to write that one somehow.
I thought you were going to say A Farewell to Arms. But
very good. You're ahead of me.
That's been done. So Hawthorne and Horowitz. And if you readers and listeners don't know what the craft of this book is, the book stars Detective Hawthorne and a writer called Anthony Horowitz. And it is the cleverest thing that you could possibly imagine. They are Holmes and Watson, clearly and adorably, but it's also Anthony Horowitz, who we're talking to today, who's writing a book or trying to write a book, trying to see if he can write a book about the case that Detective Hawthorne is working on. And if you can untangle all of that, tell us why you decided to put yourself, I mean, it's you, not narrator you or cute you or made up you, but Anthony Horowitz, the author in the book. That's about as multi-layered as you can get.
It is sort of. I mean, the setup is that, Hawthorne wants to earn money he's not earning enough money as a private eye. So he comes to a writer to write about him in the hope that and the idea is they then split the royalties 50-50. And the meta side of it is that the writer he approaches is me. And why did I come up with this? Well, when my publishers asked me to write a series of detective stories, my first question was, what can I do that's different? I'm always looking in my work to do things that haven't been done before, to try and, just to take a genre I love, murder mystery, and find ways of doing it that make you look at it in a new way. So I began by thinking, who's a detective? detective? Is it a man or a woman? Is it somebody who is fat or thin? Is it somebody who is British or from some other part of the world? Tall, short? What sort of problems do they have? Do they drink a lot? Do they have a divorce problem? What? And I suddenly realized I can make the detective an alien, a vampire, a robot. I can make the alien the detective a ghost. But all these things have been done. So then I began to think about the whole structure of the book, and I had this idea that if instead of being the author, I was the sidekick, the narrator, and I want to assure anybody listening that I am not on an ego trip here, because I go from being the cleverest person, the author, who knows everything before the book is even written, to the stupidest person, who is the sidekick, who is following 5 steps behind the detective. And in the books, I have this problem, which is that if a detective, Hawthorne, doesn't solve the crime, I don't have a book. So I'm always enthralled to him. And I'm worse than that, even, I suppose, is the fact that I don't get on with him very well, because he is quite acerbic. He's a very difficult human being. He has some views of the world that I find objectionable. And worst of all, he calls me Tony. I do not like being called Tony, but he won't listen to me. He still uses that even now. In the 4th book I'm writing, he's still calling me that name, and I can't seem to get him out of it. So there is a bit of friction between us. But as you say, that the idea is that it should be done with a laugh, with a smile. And the books have actually become, each book, I think, is getting sort of more comical in a way. I'm not trying to write comedy, but something in that relationship just seems to make people smile.
Well, the idea of the writer, of Anthony Horowitz, being in the book and needing to have a story. And so he's interested in in the murder mystery from the standpoint of, I need a book. I need to fulfill this book. And at some point, let me just read you all this really fast. This is on page 200 or so, in about the middle of the book. And it doesn't give anything away. So Anthony Horowitz says to Detective Hawthorne, "Do you know who killed him?" I asked. He stopped what he was doing, genuinely surprised. "Why do you ask that?" "I'm just wondering. The whole thing is completely unfathomable to me, and it doesn't help that there must be a dozen people who wanted him dead, including the wife. But you always work it out, and since I'm here tagging along with you as usual, and it would be quite nice to know what's in your head and whether you've solved the mystery yet. Is this for the book? Don't worry. If it is for the book, I'll leave the solution until the last chapter." I mean, I laughed out loud. I read it out loud to my husband, because at some point, about in the middle of the book, as an author, you're thinking, I wonder who did this. And as a reader, you're thinking, I wonder who did this. And we know that Sherlock Holmes, and Horowitz knows that sometimes Sherlock Holmes knows, and he's just not telling. Was it fun to write? Do you sit at your computer and laugh?
I do have a bad habit of laughing at my own jokes. Yeah, not necessarily on the computer, but when I think up a line, like kind of on the back of a London bus, I'll start to giggle, and the other passengers will move away. There's a man giggling here, but come on, we better keep out of his sight, whatever. But it is, and I instantly also, I'm not at the computer. I normally use a fountain pen for my first draft, so I'm always sitting there with my nib and my pen. But it is. I don't know why it has gone that way, but it's out of my control in a funny sort of way. That is just how it has happened, and I do love writing about him. And what I think is interesting as well is that in the first book, which is called "The Word Is Murder," I don't think he was then quite so quite as nice as he is now. With every book I write for him, I like him more. And that's something else that's happening, because actually I think it is impossible to read a detective story if you do not like the detective. That was the genius of Doyle. You get Sherlock Holmes, who is this very cold-hearted, rather aloof, distant, difficult human being. But Watson is so in love with him, and Watson is such a good friend to him. And so they're such good buddies that you can't separate them. I often say that they are the story to the greatest friendship in literature.
Yes.
And it's sort of happening with Hawthorne too. The more I write about him, the more I find myself sort of sympathizing with him.
Well, I wonder if whether, Holmes, like Hawthorne, is incredibly smart. He's incredibly intuitive, observant. He's acerbic. He knows what he's doing. He's determined. He's honorable. But he's not very nice. He's not very, whatever likable means. But Anthony Horowitz, this is so difficult to talk about. Anthony Horowitz loves him, just loves him.
I'm not sure I love him yet, but I'm certainly fond of him and I like him. And I want to know more about him. And I mean, you must know this because you've written books which has a recurring character in it, whether it's Jane Ryland or whoever you're writing about. And I'm sure, Hank, you must find this, that the more you write about your character, the more you discover to write about them.
So well, you know what? I misspoke a minute. I misspoke a minute ago. Forgive me for this, because let me just rewind and just delete that and start again. It's Watson that loves Holmes. Watson loves Holmes, and we love Holmes because Watson loves Holmes.
Yes,
and that is that relationship. And Anthony Horowitz is still trying to figure out Hawthorne.
Exactly, but the thing is as I say, with your characters, the more you write about them, the more you learn about them. In these books, the more I spend time with Hawthorne, the closer I get to the mystery of what made him who he is. Because I have a belief in life that people are not born bad. People are not born evil. Things happen to them. Things happen in their life that change them. We make decisions based on the experiences we go through. And sometimes those decisions are bad ones. And that's what turns people to crime or to becoming heartless in some way or whatever. Now, in the book, something clearly happened to Hawthorne when he was a child that has damaged him. So I don't think of him as a bad human being or an unpleasant human being. I think of him as a damaged human being, and I want to find out why. And it'll take me 12 books to get to the answer. And as I sit here talking to you now, I know half of it, but I don't know all of it. And the more I write, the more I'll be able to piece together why he is so difficult.
That's what I was just going to ask you, because Hawthorne clearly has secrets. And I wondered if you knew what they were. So we will just have to wait until you figure that out. And when I'm talking about Anthony Horowitz, the sidekick in A Line to Kill, which you will all love, I keep telling you this, I can't decide whether I'm talking about you or him. There's a wonderful line at the beginning of the book that says, producing a book is a complicated enough business, I suppose, without the author getting in the way. But here you just put yourself in the way. You put yourself in the way on purpose in order to let us understand not only what it feels like to solve a mystery, but what it feels like to write a book.
I think that's something that I can add. You see, when I talked about making the murder mystery genre do more, you see, when I was running Midsummer Murders and Agatha Christie's Poirot on TV, these are shows I loved. But I used to ask myself, all this work, 3 months of my life to do a TV script, simply to tell an audience that the butler did it? Maybe murder mystery can do something more. And in these books, the something more is an opportunity to talk about my publishers, about the life of the writer, about how murder mysteries are constructed, about why we enjoy murder mysteries, and to generally explore the genre in a sort of a meta way, whilst at the same time being inside the book and giving the reader the pleasures of a solid murder mystery with the clues, the suspects, the red herrings, the twists, the turns, the murders, etc. So you get the best of two worlds. That's the sort of idea of it.
I think you get, and I was thinking about that, you sort of get the best of three worlds. I mean, either it's the best of three worlds for the readers, but it must be the most difficult of the three worlds for you, because you had to write a really good murder mystery, a really solid, with clues and red herrings and a motive, an understandable, not out of the clear blue motive. You had to also write this meta story about you, Anthony Horowitz, seeing if there was a story in the mystery. And of course, if there isn't a story in the mystery, then you wouldn't have a book, but there was. We know that because we're reading it. So there's that.
Exactly.
And then you, Anthony Horowitz, writer Anthony Horowitz, real Anthony Horowitz, had to understand what every single element of the Golden Age mystery, a locked room like the island, where there are many suspects and many motives and many possibilities and red herrings and clues that all have to come together. And then, as in so many of the wonderful Agatha Christie's, there's this emotional, moral ending at the end. And all you put all those readers into this marvelous book. I just wish I knew how your mind worked.
Well, you're so kind, Hank, and you say such lovely things. I will tell you this, that when I meet someone who's read one of my books, the first question I ask is not did you enjoy it, but did you guess it? That's the first thing to me. And to me, it's terribly important. I don't mind if people guess the answer. Well done them. Because one of the things that I try and do is to make sure that it is guessable. The clues are there in plain sight. Nothing is kept away from the reader. There's no information that the detective receives that you don't read. So it is all there. And I think it is terribly important for the writer to play 100% fair with the reader. Or if it's TV, the viewer. And I get very cross, especially when I'm watching TV shows where I get to the end of it and the killer is revealed. And I say, well, hold on a minute. There was no way that I, as a viewer, could have guessed that. I love the sort of the way that a reader can share the journey, both with me, the writer, but also with the detective. Think about it. In what other type of book does the main character, the detective, and the reader stand closer together? They start at the same place, a murder. They do the same journey. They gather the same clues. They arrive at the same ending, and then they part company. And that closeness is another reason why these books are so enjoyable.
You're just really making me cry for some reason. I'm not quite sure why you induced that in me, but I love that. I mean,
well, I hope it's happy cry. It's not sad.
It is happy cry. It is happy cry. Good. Of course. It's touching cry. And it's this sort of connection cry of this is why we do this. I mean, I'll be watching a crime show on television with my criminal defense attorney husband, and I'll be saying, it's the brother. She's pregnant. Someone's going to drown. And Jonathan will say, can't you just watch it? and I say, no, I can't just watch it. I have to try to figure it out. And I'm equally, I think, happy if I figure it out. I think, ooh, I knew that. I'm so smart. Or if someone surprises me, like you did in A Line to Kill, because I knew the answer to this book about 15 times. Yeah. I knew the solution to this about 15 times. I had it. When a wonderful author can just twist it and pull the rug out from under me and say, here's what you were really reading. You just didn't see it. That sleight of hand that Agatha Christie was so enormously good at.
That is what I learned from Agatha. The thing about an Agatha Christie book is that you reach the ending and maybe you guessed it, but if you don't guess it, you still smile because you say, yes, of course it was that. How could I have been so wrong? And she's very clever also at misleading, that wonderful sleight of hand that takes you the wrong way. One of my favorite Agatha Christie's is Cards on the Table, where there are only 4 suspects. It's a game of bridge, and one of the bridge players is the murderer. And so you'd think you've got a 1 in 4 chance of getting it right. But I mean, when I read it, I was completely bamboozled and I went for, way off beam. And yet it was all there in front of me. And I think that is what she does so well.
I always wonder if she thought of that, like, what if I could have 4 people in a bridge game and then have it be one of them? How the thought process of that. I think I was about 12 when I read Murder on the Orient Express. And I remember getting to the end of that book, and it was formative to me. I thought that was all. I'm not going to say anything about it to you all if you haven't read it, but if you haven't, just first read this, then go read Murder on the Orient Express. How did she do that? How did she do that? And I went back and read it again, and everything was there, including the gorgeous moral decision at the end.
Well, funny enough, since you mentioned that, A Line to Kill ends with a sort of a moral choice that the detectives make, which is very much inspired by Murder on the Orient Express, which I read when I was 19 in a hotel in Istanbul, just about a few streets away from the station where the Orient Express began or ended its journey, and with dysentery. And I remember still reading it and having much the same reaction as you, and then going back and saying, how does she do it? And, I think a part of our craft is to read the great masters and mistresses of the genre and to read them for pleasure, but also to try and learn from their creativity and their structuring and to borrow, not their ideas, but their techniques.
And I think that one of the things that you do so beautifully like that is that the puzzle pieces, the clues of the crime are right there in front of you. They are absolutely right there. It's just that you don't notice them, but you don't even try to hide them. When I went back and read it the second time, I thought, oh, there's that. Oh, I remember that. And there was one part of the story, and I'm going to be a little unclear about this to the readers, where I thought I noticed a thing and I thought, ooh, that's a thing. And then there was nothing more about it, nothing more about it, nothing more about it. And I know how careful you are about coming up with this perfect braided, woven together ending. And I kept thinking, what about the thing? What about the thing? And then in the end was that there was.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I just stood and applauded. I just thought that is how important. That was so brilliant. How important is braiding? I mean, how much do you know at the beginning, and how much fun is it to braid?
I can say that I begin with this. This is my notebook for my things, and every single page. This is one of, I think this is Magpie Murder, and I don't begin writing a book until I've covered about 30 pages of a book like this, with diagrams and drawings and question marks. I've got here: Buick stole his silver coins. Clarissa hates him. Jealousy, humiliation. Dr. Redwing. Arthur's painting. And this is all little notes and ideas. This is obviously Magpie Murders that I've got there in front of me, which I was happy to open on. But I don't even begin writing the book until every single clue and idea and thread and red herring and connection is in place. And in some ways, to me, the most fun part of the book is that planning stage. It takes longer. Magpie Murders took me something like 15 years to work out and plan. And you may sound like an exaggeration, but if you look at a very, very early episode of Midsummer Murders, the program that you mentioned, one of the characters in that show, written 15 odd years ago, is reading Magpie Murders. I had a mock-up done because I knew I was going to write this book, and it's there in the TV show. And then it took me another 10, 15 years to actually to write it. Since then, I'm happy to say I'm a little bit faster. My publisher would not be very happy to wait 15 years for every book I do. But that planning process is enormously intensive. I've been doing it all this week, actually. I'm about to start work on Hawthorne number 4, and I've worked out who the killer is and why the king. That's why I always start incidentally. That all these books start for me with that very, very simple question. 2 people, A plus B equals C. A is one person, B is the other person, C, the reason why A kills B. That's where it all begins. And I've worked that out now, so I know who the killer is, I know why the killing happens, and then I've been just sweating over what is the clue that I can put face onto the page that will say, this is the killer. Read this line and you know who the killer is, but you won't know you've read that line. And last night I worked that out. And I just remember I was in the bathtub, and I was just sitting there, and suddenly, bang, it came. And that to me is the most exciting part. I don't know if it's the same for you, Hank. That to me is the most exciting part of writing. It's when the idea comes that just not unlocks everything, but if you like, locks everything, that everything now will come together and work. And I had that last night for number 4. So I'm on a roll.
You are on this. It happened to me last night as well. I have to tell you, I was in bed with my eyes closed, and it's just like in a novel. I was in bed with my eyes closed, and I went, oh, it's that. And it's sort of that. I mean, I wonder whether the bath and bed and this sort of peaceful alpha state where your brain is sort of thinking along without a filter, and something just sort of blossoms. Well, I mean, it's ideas, it's imagination. It's quite astonishing.
I have 2 dogs, which sort of helps me a lot. Walking my dogs in Suffolk is a great way to get ideas, because when I'm walking my dogs, I'm turning ideas over and over in my head, and it doesn't always happen. Maybe it's a combination of the 2. It's the hard walk. It's sort of 4 or 5 miles across across the fields here, then back, and then in the evening repose and rest. And the ideas are still there, and now they sort of sprout and grow into the book, and they come. But it is funny, isn't it? The bed, the bath, that moment of just sort of quietness is when it all sort of just happens.
It seems like it's so special. Sort of, we as human beings are the only creatures who can do that, who can make a new world out of only our imagination.
But don't forget also that reading is the most creative thing you can do with your time. That's why people who read are always so interesting to talk to and lovely to meet and sympathetic, because reading exercises your mind in a way I can think of nothing else that exercises your mind so much. It's so similar to writing in a way. You're doing exactly the same thing as a writer. You are creating the world, the story, the characters. You are inhabiting it. You are making it live simply by the act of reading. And even just putting the hieroglyphics or the letters together into words, the words in sentences, the sentences into paragraphs, remembering all the detail, building the world, seeing it. That in itself is an act of astonishing creativity. I mean, and I think we all know that people who read have a spark to them that people who are sadly have not discovered books do not. And when I'm asked in my life, forgive me just going on a little 30 seconds more. When I'm asked in my life what I'm proudest of all my books I have written, although I love my murder mysteries, it's Alex Rider that's the answer, because Alex Rider, this teenage spy series, is credited with helping to get lots and lots of boys in England and maybe in America and around the world too, into books. And I think that to have played a small part in that process of bringing people to books, the future readers who will read you and who will read me and who will read the next generation of writers too, to have done that, I think is something very valuable. And I'm very proud of the fact that Alex has done that.
He's changed people's lives. The people who read that, the young adults who read that, and adults too, their lives are changed, and they're sort of reassured that it's okay. It's sort of when I read A Wrinkle in Time when I was growing up.
Ursula Le Guin, wonderful. Those books, I read those too.
Or the Edward Eager mysteries, that it was cool to be smart and that it was cool to figure out things. You know, I was voted most individual in school. They put my picture in the yearbook upside down because I was so weird. And all I did was read. All I did was read and watch old movies. And that has really served me well. We were talking earlier about that you've been writing since you were 10. We're going on way too long. Do you all mind? You'll stay with us a couple of minutes more, right? Longer than we were. People are just pouring into this meeting. Sully and Brenda, Bozania, and so many people are here. It's welcome to all of you. Anissa and Sherry. Oh, that's so nice to see you all. When I look over here, you know I'm looking at the comments. So you've been writing since you were 10. Is that true?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it was at age 10, I knew without any doubt that I was going to be a writer. You just said you were the most, what was the word you used for yourself at school? The most peculiar, the most unusual, the most
individual. That meant weird.
I was the stupidest kid in the school. That was what I was known for. I was really a non-starter. I was unpopular, I was overweight, I was unhappy, and I was alone. And it was books that saved my life. The discovery of books in the library, escaping from this horrible boarding school in North London where I was day and night, I was there away from my home and from my parents, and so unhappy. So reading books, first of all, opened doors. I always say that books have that. This is the English version of my own book, by the way, but I always think it's not a coincidence that books are shaped exactly like doors and have the same mechanism as a door. They open exactly like that and let you in, and you travel into the world of the book, whether it's Narnia or wherever it might be. And that's what it was for me. And as a result of reading, I started telling stories to the other kids. We slept in dormitories, 8 kids to a room. And I would, at night, when the lights were out, tell these other unhappy children stories of my own that I made up. And when I was, and as a result of this, the children loved the stories, and suddenly I began to make friends, and they liked me. And I knew at the age of 10 that I would be a writer, I would be a professional writer, and I would be nothing else. There was never a plan B. And I am so lucky and so blessed that it worked out. Not immediately. My first 10 books, although they're still in print, did not sell very well. And it was only when I actually came up with Alex Rider, book number 11, I think it was, in 2001, maybe, that my life took off. And when I talk to people who want to write, I always say to them, don't ever give up. The only difference between an unsuccessful writer and a successful writer is that the unsuccessful writer stops. And I never did. I kept going until I had my breakthrough, and that was Alex Rider.
That's incredibly inspirational. I love that a teenager your teenage self gave you your breakthrough to your adult self, and incredibly life-changing. Speaking of wonderful, can we talk about just briefly your masterpiece theater and Magpie Murders?
Definitely, Magpie Murders. Magpie Murders has just been filmed by my wife, who is a producer, Jill Green. We've been married together for 33 years, and we worked together for about 25 of those 33 years. And she is both my best friend, my soulmate, and she is brilliant at her job, which is to produce these shows. And I adapted the book, which was not easy. It's a very, very big, complicated book cut down into 6 one-hour episodes. But we struck gold because we managed to get Leslie Manville to play my Ryland, who is Susan Ryland. And she is just the most wonderful actress and also a gorgeous human being and one of the loveliest people to work with. And we have a fantastic cast. Peter Cattaneo directed it. He's the director of a film called The Full Monty. You may remember that. It was a huge hit at the beginning of his career. and he's done the most wonderful job on it. The show is that I've seen all 6 episodes, and I can't tell you how excited I am. It will be out in the USA with PBS Masterpiece Theatre. I don't know when, sometime next year, and I can't wait to hear what everybody thinks of it. You can always instantly reach me on Twitter and let me know what you think of my books, my TV, or anything else.
And you're at Anthony Horowitz on Twitter.
Yes, and I've just started following you as well, Hank. So
oh, good, thank you.
So anything you want to say, I will. Anything you say, I will be seeing.
Oh, that's okay. That's sort of scary. When you saw Magpie Murders in life, in color, and with your Susan, and with the people, and with the dialogue, what was it like you thought it would be? Is it?
I think that, well, first of all, I didn't see a lot of it on the set because, sadly, because of COVID, I wasn't allowed to go to the set. Although I do make a cameo appearance. I do a lot of appearances in my shows. I try to appear in all of them, and I've been many dead bodies and walk-ons, or somebody at the back of the screen reading a newspaper. In this one, I won't say where I am.
Do.
Okay, there is a sequence in a funeral, and I'm a mourner, and I do get a good little shot of myself in there. And I think that so I didn't see a lot of the filming, but I'll say this: what Peter's genius is, he's made my work better than I thought it was. And that's what I think a great director does. He finds something in your writing that actually even you didn't see, and he puts it on the screen. And I honestly think, I think Foil, which I also did with my wife, Jill, for 16 years, we worked on that together. And I'm very, very proud of that. I think Magpie could be even better. There's nothing like it has ever been done on TV, because of course you're dealing with 2 worlds. Part of it is set in 1950, part of it in the present day. And the way the 2 worlds interconnect on the television is very different to the books and really unique.
Well, I was wondering, because the construction of that book is so gorgeously complicated, complex, I would say, rather than complicated, that I was wondering how that would translate. So I absolutely cannot wait to see.
Don't forget that on TV you can't stop and go back, or you can, but it's more difficult. So it has to be more sort of, and I like what you just said, the difference between complex and complicated. Complex is what I'm aiming for. If it's complicated, something's gone wrong.
Exactly. I want to do you have 2 more minutes to take questions, 3 maybe from the audience, because I know that people are clamoring to ask you questions. Anissa is asking, have you ever uncovered information in your research for a book that you found too unsettling to use in a book? I wonder if that came into A Line to Kill at all.
I think, well, we have talked about the Nazi atrocities, which I did discover in my research, which I did find too unsettling for that book. One of the Alex Rider books is about nanotechnology. And a lot of what I found in that book and the possibilities of nanotechnology and warfare were too horrible to put into a book for kids. So I dropped a lot of that too. But by and large, I'm sure you're the same, Hank. If you're going to spend time, research is about knowing everything and then selecting from it what works for the book. You've got to become an expert in every field. You can't just be an expert in one little teeny bit of it. So a lot of it is not used simply for the fact that there's too much of it to go in.
And you also sort of just take in by osmosis everything. And then you sort of let it all go and write the book when you're in the world, and what you need sort of emerges from your little trove of things that you've tucked away.
That's right. But the more you read, obviously, the more authority you have and the better you can write it. There's a character in this book called Derek Abbott, who's a very, very unpleasant character. I read an autobiography of somebody whose name I cannot mention, so I will get sued if I did. But it was by understanding this very unpleasant individual that I was able to create this character, because I didn't base him on the character, but I knew the sort of world he inhabited. So research provides me with my sort of both a pedestal and a comfort blanket and a sense of knowing where I am.
And a sort of psychological understanding of motivation, why people do what they do, and what would make sense. Who else has a question? I have a million more, but I need to let Anthony go. A review says, a brilliant satire on the world of books and writers, and an immensely enjoyable locked room mystery. How did you feel called to, satirize the book? I mean, it's more, I don't know if it's, do you call it satire? I call it sort of a love letter.
I think it is not really satirizing, because you're right. I love books and publishers and the whole world of that we inhabit so much, literary festivals and everything to do with it. This sort of event, I think it's so reassuring. And again, that in a difficult world, people will come from all over America, in this case, to this meeting just to talk about books and just to be together. And that's why I love literary festivals about that. So I'm not really satirizing the book world. I am sort of, I'm having a wry smile both at the book world and my place in it, because at the end of the day, it is a job like no other. In fact, I'd never call it a job, because it isn't. It's a love affair, it's a vocation, it's a passion, it's all these things. But it is funny, the relationship between writers and publishers and editors and readers and bookstores and the world of books. I don't know if you look at things like sales figures and all the sort of research that goes on in the background into your books. I avoid it with terror. I'm too scared of the real world. I just want me and my book. That's all that matters. Just just the two of us against the world. So, but it's lovely to write about it let's say in a loving way, but with a smile.
Yes, I mean, you're very honest about it. I don't know how much of it is true, but there is an assistant who doesn't even know who you are, but is effusive about you.
But every writer has his or her humiliations. I mean, it goes with that. I'm sure, Hank, have in your very early days sat at a signing table next door to another author whose line goes out the back of the store, and you've got two people. And I used to have that, when I began my career, and the guy next to me's got 30 people, I've got 2. What I would do, I would take 10 minutes to sign the book. I'd say, now, come on, tell me what your name is, what message should I, and I'd write to Jack, I very much hope that you enjoy this book, which I enjoyed writing myself, and let's hope that we meet again. I just go writing and writing and writing, just to try and keep up with the guy, So all these little things. And so not being recognized by my own publishers is just sort of part of the sort of the fun of being a writer.
There's a wonderful New Yorker cartoon where there's a signing table, and at one end of the table is a sign that says "Meet the author," and there's the author sitting there with his books, nobody in line. And then on the other side of the table, there's a sign that says "Meet the puppy," and there's a puppy sitting on
so New Yorker. That's great.
The line out the door. So that's how I always feel. I say to my husband, "Shall we go to the bookstore and see if they have my book? Just another opportunity for humiliation." And then we just go.
I'm going to get my puppy to come to the screen, but he's lying on the floor, refusing to move.
Oh, what kind of puppies do you have?
I have he's here. There he is.
Meet the puppy.
Did you mention it? Meet the puppy. There you are. I've done that.
Play with me. We have gone on so much too long. You are the best sport in the world. Thank you.
Hank, you were lovely to talk to. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this, and everybody at Mighty Mysteries, and everybody, Margaret there, and Karen, and all the other people who have put questions in and stuff and have been listening. It is such a pleasure to do this, and I've had a lovely time. So thank you all very much.
And I want you to come back and look at the chat when we're finished, because there is just adulation and joy and admiration.
Okay. And can I say congratulations to Brenda Gaskell, who seems to have won a copy of the book?
Yay, Brenda Gaskell, you win A Line to Kill You. Lucky, lucky woman, Brenda Gaskell. I thank you so much, Anthony, and I thank you all for being here for this extended version of the Mighty Mysteries. Next week, we will bring you Wanda Morris. All Her Little Secrets is a debut thriller, a legal thriller, which some people have called The Firm Meets How to Get Away with Murder. It's a fantastic debut, terrific, not to be missed, and you will love Wanda Morris. But again, closing today, run right out right now. Well, not right now, in about 10 seconds, and get A Line to Kill. You will love every page. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next.